Yes.
All right, we're live. Welcome to the No Show. My name is Andrea Edwards.
And my name is Joe Augustin, and he feels that way because he is slightly out of focus. And this is Tim Wade.
Hi, I'm Tim Wade. Yeah, this is a different camera. I might swap my camera a little bit later. Welcome to the No Show, everybody. It's great to be here on this wonderful day. Andrea, you're in a hotel room, is that right?
I am. I'm just down south of Patong, having a few days off with the kids.
Very nice.
Holidays.
Joe's in his studio, and I am switching cameras rapidly at the moment. But we have a special guest with us today. I should probably introduce her.
Indeed. Let's bring her in.
So this week we're going to be joined by Cathy Johnson, the authentic leadership coach. Does that mean she only coaches authentic leaders? We'll find out. She's a speaker, coach, and facilitator, as well as a keen follower of the world's news, which is why she's here on the No Show to help us all. Our theme this week is being our most authentic selves and why it matters. And we'll discuss why authenticity is so critical today and how it supports our ability to make decisions with integrity, as well as getting clear on what matters to us and the actions we take. Welcome, Cathy.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you all. Great to be here. I'm not sure what else I will say about me, except I'm a coach, a facilitator, and a speaker. And I'm good friends with each of you three, so I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. She's a fabulous person, but also very interested in world affairs, and that's one of the reasons I absolutely had to have you on. Although it's hard getting any time in your diary, woman. You're so busy.
Yes, I am, but good busy.
Yeah. All right. So if you want to comment and so that we can see it, you've got to sign in and give StreamYard permission. So come in and join in the conversation. But do you want to get stuck into the news that struck a chord this week?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Let's get to it.
Ready? Well, the breaking news this morning that you guys may not have seen, Alec Baldwin has accidentally shot and killed, as well as seriously hurt another actor, the producer and the photographer in a movie set, and it's with a stunt gun. So a terrible accident that just came out, breaking news this morning. But the big news, I think, this week that sort of kicked the week off was the death of former US Secretary of State Colin Powell. I was surprisingly sad by that. Did you guys sort of feel that moment?
I was definitely sad. Yeah.
Yeah, I was immediately incensed by how it was weaponized by the group that I also kind of look into. I'm following what the anti-vaxxers are doing, and they immediately hopped on that and turned that into something else.
Well, that's I think you're very brave getting into an anti-vaxxer group, because they do tend to sort of get into you and take over you, and it's a risk. But John Roberts from Fox News tweeted, the fact that Colin Powell died from a breakthrough COVID infection raises new concerns about how effective vaccines are long term. And a lady called Nina Jankovic replied, he also suffered from multiple myeloma. Any reporting that mentions Powell's COVID-19 vaccination status, but not that his body was essentially unable to fight infections, is not doing its due diligence. So that's been a pretty interesting series of events this week, I thought.
Yeah.
I'm getting really convinced that a lot of these people who report in that way don't really know what the truth is anyway, as in like they really just, look at what they've seen somewhere and report it and say it out without even checking somewhere else.
Yeah, that's completely irresponsible. But let's continue with COVID. So I'm sure you've been noticing that in the UK, COVID has now hit around the 50,000 infections a day mark, significantly higher than the rest of Europe. So lots of conversations, should they move to plan B? Should they move to plan C? They're not mandating masks. There's no vaccine passports. But the hospitalisation and the critical patients are definitely lower if you compare the statistics to this time last year. And then on the other side, the World Health Organization have said that due to vaccine inequity, the pandemic will continue deep into 2022. So like when I think about what we've been talking about for weeks now, just reminding everyone, we're always 2 weeks behind COVID. We're always, you've got to look at it in the big picture perspective. But Joe, I did notice that you've been having a bit of fun on Facebook this week talking about COVID. There was an Irish story that you shared. Do you want to share a little bit about what you've been reading?
Well, okay. So the Irish story that I shared was about how someone had taken data, or at least taken a news story, and kind of found a conclusion from that. It was basically how this particular Irish county had a 97% rate of vaccination, and it also simultaneously had one of the highest rates of infections, rate of cases for COVID at the same time. And they just put that together and said, absolutely, that proves that vaccines don't work. And in fact, went on to say that it actually proves that vaccines weaken the immune system. That's why the vaccine. That's why the rate had been so high. So I just got on that in terms of trying to help people go, like, it's not as simple as that. You got to go deeper. You got to ask bigger questions. You got to find out why that's the case and what had happened. And I think that article that you shared with us as well about why COVID cases are so high in the UK, or at least it attempts to ask the question and answer the question why the cases are so high in the UK, is the kind of thing that people should be doing. They should be looking at something and going, like, why is that the case? And then before they share a conclusion that is well, baseless, is essentially the way to describe it.
Yeah. Cathy, have you been reading anything about COVID in the last week?
Yeah, the usual stuff. And that article was very interesting also, just in highlighting some things that, that I don't know, bringing some things together, even though it's focused on the UK. I'm always watching a little more around COVID in the US. One thing that happened is the US lowered Singapore's COVID rating from level 3 to level 4, the worst level, because they're apparently in dire straits, a lot worse than the US, apparently. So a little shocking.
I saw something about that, and it just infuriated me. Did anyone see I know I'm saying the F word, but anyone see the Fox News version of that?
No. What?
So basically, they had some super scientist dude next to them who would validate everything they had to say, and the host would ask him a direct question, and as soon as she fed him what she wanted, she cut him off, so he couldn't do the but. But effectively, it was like, Singapore, who was the shining light, are now experiencing massive, a flood of cases, and they were the ones that were saying we all need to get jabbed, and they're all wearing masks, and all the pictures were people wearing masks. Wow. And now they've got all these extra cases, so obviously, obviously that doesn't work. And
well, the thing about that particular story is, and what's frustrating about that is, there is somewhere in there's a shade of truth in what is being said, in the sense that what is being talked about is the need for herd immunity, and why Singapore is actually, in some sense, it's COVID naive. So we're vaccinated, but we've never been really exposed to it. The rate of infection, I think, it's only 3% of our population so far has been exposed to COVID. So we don't have any natural immunity. What we have is acquired vaccination-based immunity. And the best kind of immunity is going to come when we are, with a vaccination, exposed to the real thing, and then our body learns and goes, okay, this is how we deal with it, and then it builds up.
Exactly.
So that little bit of truth was what that expert was about, and I don't know why experts accept invitations by Fox, because maybe they feel that they can do something about the truth. Because I know this guy didn't subscribe to what they were saying about it, and in fact, the clip that's being put around, or being shared around, is exactly that. He's about to say what the Prime Minister is saying, because they use a clip of Lee Hsien Loong talking about it and saying it's a flip-flop in message. And really, it's not. He's about to explain why it's not, but they cut him off because the narrative didn't fit.
Yeah.
So you did see it. Because I was about to say all of that. Yeah, but that was pretty much, that was it. It was, effectively, if the virus comes in and we're unvaccinated, we're all going to be in hospital and a bunch of people are going to die. If we all get vaccinated before the virus comes in, then it comes in, we're all going to get it, but we're not going to go to hospital and we're not going to die.
Yeah.
So
and the hospitals.
And the hospitals can handle it. Isn't it better that your people are vaccinated and isn't it better when you go to war that you've got weapons? America should know that better than anyone. So you know, they're happy going to war without any weapons, and it's just like, and that's why I don't know how many people are dead in America because of this thing, but it's a lot more than Singapore.
700,000, right?
770,000, nearly 1 million people.
They passed.
Just rounded up.
They passed the 1918 pandemic just a few weeks ago. We were talking about it.
770,000 versus what, 30 something.
Yeah.
I still think Singapore's doing better than America.
But do you guys feel? Do you feel that there was a lot of frustration with the government's recent handling of keeping people in lockdown? Do you guys feel that they were right?
So I'm going to do something that I really am not supposed to do because, first of all, I am still a Malaysian. I have a family that's entirely Singaporean around me, and I'm not supposed to comment about things like this, but I'm going to say something. The real problem is this particular government doesn't defend itself. It doesn't really want to spend the time on the rhetoric. It wants to do the work. And right now, with the situation, there is something very big happening that no one is going to try and touch and talk about because they won't say it. And this is just me, and this is just my opinion based on the science I understand and what I see going on. What we have is a controlled burn right now. There was an article that came out in the papers. It was an opinion piece by one of the journalists, and this opinion was basically, are we paying too high a price by avoiding the inevitable, by going through all these measures, right? And I got to say that in my mind, that the fact that this article was written this way, it dropped that journalist's esteem in my mind, because the words that came out of it, and this could be the editor's choice, said inevitable. Are we just trying to avoid the inevitable? And the problem is, if anyone dies, I'm actually, and it's very morbid to say so, I'm okay if anyone dies inevitably from COVID-19. What I'm saying is that in the course of the disease, if someone does die at this stage, after all the vaccination and everything happens, if it's inevitable, that's reasonable for me. What I am completely unable to handle, and I think no one should be able to handle, is this. If anyone dies because it wasn't inevitable, if someone has COVID-19 and dies because there's not enough oxygen, there's not enough beds, there's not enough people to look after this person, that they could be saved, but because it got out of hand, it was not an inevitable death, but it just got out of hand. And that's the thing that we kind of had to work on. And it's I don't know how people are able to look at it and go like, oh, it's going to happen, we might as well just have it happen right now. The point is, if you look at the numbers right now, we can see that we're getting close to the capacity, as in we can see the numbers getting close to where ICU beds are available or won't be available. We can see those numbers coming up. And if we do, so the question to ask yourself now is, with all the measures now and the brakes that we're trying to throttle on at the same time, if we're still heading in that direction right now, is it a smart move to then take the brakes off and say, you know what, let's just go and see what happens? The fact is, we're COVID naive, we're an underexposed population. It's like lighting a fire in a dry forest if you don't have all these other measures in place. And the thing is, some of us are the wood that are going to go up.
I mean, another way to look at it, Joe, is okay, let's take off the shackles. Everyone has to have a big party at their house, and you have to invite 50 people. Andrea can do it at her place. So 50 people are coming, your 50 closest friends and relatives and people you haven't seen for ages. Now they can finally come over. So we're going to have the party, but 2 of them will die by the end of the night. You happy to do that? Yeah. I'm not.
Well, The thing about this is the inevitable part of this. If we talk about vaccinations and what vaccination can do, the best we can do, all that's fine. But the problem is when you get to when you get to past capacity, what happens is people die not because of COVID. Like in the US, what you see is people having a heart attack, nothing to do with COVID at all, but they can't find an ICU to look after them, so they die because there was no help available. And it's not a price that I think people can look at themselves in the face and go like, or look at themselves in the eyes and say, oh, that's okay. Because it's abstract right now. People are desperate. They really want to get back to it. And I really feel for them. And it's always easy to blame somebody who's responsible for holding you back because of anti-vaxxers and all those people. But there is a need for us to at least come back together and go like, okay, let's have all these diverse views and at the same time understand this thing about capacity and say, okay, let's not use it all up at the same time, because if we do, then people are going to die, and it won't be just because of COVID.
Although when we saw in India, a lot of people who did die died of COVID, but it wasn't inevitable that they died. A lot of younger people died because they couldn't get access to oxygen. They couldn't get a hospital bed. I mean, I was talking to so many of my Indian friends. Everybody I know in India lost somebody. And a lot of younger people passed away. And it's literally because they were just completely overwhelmed. And we saw it in Indonesia. We saw it at the hospitals in Bangkok. You know, there's been some terrible, terrible stories. And there's a global oxygen shortage. You know, 4% of Africa has received a vaccine. 4%. You know, we're and like the World Health Organization said, this is going to go deep into 2022 because we're not approaching it from a global perspective, and we're not taking care of every country, and variations and mutations are going to come, and it's just it's a bit of a relentless journey for all of us, right?
Yeah, I wanted to just add, I don't agree with everything the Singapore government does, but I would say this situation is really a huge struggle for any government anywhere. I think they're trying to ride a fine line, but I also would say, I don't know when it was, a month or two ago, whenever it was, Lee Hsien Loong was talking about how the numbers are going to get up to, I don't know what he said, 5,000 or 8,000 or 10,000 a day, and we want to control the access and the facilities for people to be able to be treated. And I find that this whole shutting down, it's not circuit breaker. It's not going back to what we had last year, but keeping it at 2 people and the restrictions that there are, I find it, I think they're doing, as you said, Joe, doing the right thing so that we don't go through the roof. So we're not lighting a match in a dry forest. But I think it's also doable. I mean, I'm really being conscious of not going nuts about this shutdown, because a lot of people, it is very upsetting to a lot of people. You're back, Tim. It is upsetting to a lot of people, and a lot of people's lives are upended. But I don't know. I'm focused on helping to create calmness as much as possible, because we're not going to be through this anytime soon. And getting used to, sometimes we're going to have cutbacks, sometimes we won't. That's going to be around for a while.
Yeah,
that's my approach.
Yeah. It's the sane approach, right? Stop resisting it. It's a reality, and we're going to have to get through it. Let's move into the environment. So a couple of really big pieces came out this week, and obviously with COP26 coming up, there's a lot of environmental content coming out. There was a piece this week, 99.9% of scientific research agrees that climate change is human induced. So that's gone from 97% to 99.9%. And there's also a leak of what the governments are trying to do with the IPCC report to get them to chop it down. But one of the big issues that I think we all really, really need to understand and invest our time and energy and attention in is the technology solutions that are being offered. So there's a an amazing article called "Is Sucking Carbon Out of the Air the Solution to Our Climate Crisis?" It's published in Mother Jones. Obviously, it'll be in my weekend reads this week. And this article really does take us on a journey where the technology is, and there's multiple variations of this technology, its challenges, its opportunities, but most importantly, the solutions that are being put forward the strongest will actually mean that the fossil fuel industry will continue as it is for some time to come. So one of the technologies you're going to hear more and more about is called DAC, which is direct air capture. Right now, there's a pilot plant, I think it's up somewhere on the border in Canada, and it can process up to 1,000 metric tons of CO2 annually. Just to give you an idea, we emit 33 billion tons a year. So 1,000 metric tons isn't a lot. But the idea is we capture, we converted it into fuel, we release more emissions, but we capture those emissions so we're not increasing emissions. So that's kind of the idea. And the bigger idea is obviously we build enough machines that we can start bringing down the CO2 in the atmosphere and reverse climate change. So, and eventually not converting it into fuel will also start pumping it deep into the earth, which also has environmental impacts. So we're basically, what we need to be doing is we need to be drawing down 10 billion metric tons of CO2 per year. And the question in the article is this where we should focus? And it makes the argument from every angle. So the governments are subsidizing this technology, private billionaires are subsidizing it too, but the money is nowhere near enough, and the price will only come down when the scale goes up. But it relies on the fossil fuel industry, because the fossil fuel industry has the infrastructure in place to be able to build the machines, to sequester the carbon, and that means that that's an industry that can continue as it is. Another one is called bioenergy with carbon capture and sequestration. Easy enough for you to say. And that acronym is BECS. So that's another one that you can hear about. And many say it's a fantasy. It's the amount of physical space it needs to be actually implemented is just an impossibility. But from all I'm reading about DECS, BECS, and all of the other ones, it's definitely going to have a part to play. But with the fossil fuel industry being able to maintain its business as usual for a decade, 2 decades, 50 years, the lobbying towards that technology is going to be what makes this the thing that we rely on the most. So as an example, people will fight, let's plant trees, right? Okay. So afforestation and reforestation actually runs into the same problems as BECS and DAC. To plant enough trees so that we can get to net zero by 2050, it requires 4 billion acres, and that is the equivalent to 80% of the global farmland currently on the planet. So it's a bit of a bind if you look at it, but if all of the focus and the funding goes in one direction, we're pretty much screwed. So we need to be looking at doing multiple things and investing in all of them if we have any chance of being able to come through this crisis and build a bit of future out the other end. So did you guys have a chance to have a look at that article?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I wasn't aware of DAC, so this was new to me. But I like how it goes into, nor BECS, but I like how it goes into the detail about the background and what's possible. But fundamentally, it will mean getting this carbon dioxide to be bought and used for something or stored somewhere, but also getting the big fossil fuel companies to get real, change their direction, which is not going to be easy.
Yeah. If you're interested in energy storage as well, which is another big problem that needs to be solved. So, solar, wind, how do we store the energy and then move it around the world? There's a podcast, Wall Street Journal podcast called The Future of Everything. And they're doing a series on carbon capture. So I'd recommend having a listen to that. It's a really interesting part of the climate crisis conversation. All right. The other one is forget your carbon footprint. Let's talk about your carbon shadow. And I thought this was a really interesting point of view that sort of so many of the arguments and conversations I'm having with people are, but you drive a car. And I'm like, well, of course I drive a car because I live in a place where that's the only option that I've got is to drive a car, and the electric infrastructure isn't here. So, you know, you can only be as green as you can be based on what's available to you. But basically the article talks about two people. So one of them flies around the world every week, and the other one walks to work and lives in a small apartment. Who's got the bigger footprint? Well, obviously the person who flies every week would have the bigger footprint, but the person who walks to work and lives in a small apartment works for an advertising company, and they create ads for the fossil fuel industry. So that's kind of the message. It's a bigger message. So BP introduced the concept of our personal carbon footprint nearly 20 years ago now, and we've been focused on that. But when we only focus on that, we're focusing on individual small actions that don't necessarily have the impact of the bigger actions, like who we vote for, how many children we have, where we live, but equally how much we talk about the climate crisis and try and get other people to act and to think. You know, like I won't buy a plastic bottle of water unless my children are dying. I literally will not, and I'll do everything I can to make sure that I don't have plastic if there's any way for me to avoid it. So it's really about the climate shadow is about all of your life choices, and you know, so it's how you spend your money, how you vote, how much you talk about climate change, and also whether your words are amplifying urgency, apathy, or denial. So your shadow gets bigger. So the three parts of the climate shadow are my consumption, my choices, and my attention. It's a really interesting perspective. And obviously when I was reading it, I was realizing that my climate shadow is obviously a little bit smaller than a lot of people I know, because I'm certainly talking about it with urgency. So that was a really good piece. Did you guys, anyone have a chance to read that one?
Yeah. And it was fascinating, actually, because the big picture, which you just told about, of big companies talking about, you know, something that makes us focus on the little things, which is fine, and that's good. But then we don't need to do anything big, because the big part, it seems too big. But I can, you know, make sure I don't use straws now, and that's where I put my energy, or no plastic anywhere. But then they're not held to the fire. No one's really feeling a sense of urgency, because I'm taking care of my stuff. I've got my. But when you look at the shadow, it's a bigger thing. And the first little example that the article starts with, which you mentioned, it's not just that the guy is who is riding his bike to work is actually doing an ad for the big oil. Did you look at the ad? Because they gave an example of an ad where it's one that they put out some years back, not long ago, but it was about how whichever company, I think it was BP, Exxon. Yeah, was it had a picture of wind energy, you know, the windmill thing, whatever, like that we're going into this new space now. But that's not what they're doing. That's not a big push. It's not there. It's distracting. Anyway, no, I love that one. That one is. I just think it's really worth reading. It's lovely, actually.
Does it make you want to talk up more? Did it make you want to?
Yeah, it does.
More? No.
Yeah, it does. It's one that I think when you see a bigger picture, which is what that article is about. It's not just to get where we need to get to. It's not going to. We're not going to get there in time if we're thinking about little things. It's not to drop that, but the voices need to get bigger.
Yeah, but I find when people focus on doing the little things and changing their life, they also start to become more aware, and then they become more. Their voice becomes bigger. Their concern becomes bigger. They notice more. So the little things do matter, because it fundamentally shifts. You know, when people walk into my house and I go into the fridge and there's a big plastic bottle of Coke, I'm like, why would you bring that into my home? You know, I'm outraged by it, right? But it gives me an opportunity to say something to them as well, because people just don't think. They don't think about stuff like that, you know?
I agree, but and so yes, we might voice out more in situations like that. But I think some people, I think that's why I really like what you're doing here with this no show and with all of your weekend readings, because I think really there is enough stuff out there that if enough people just get exposed to it and read it so that we learn more, it can have a bigger difference. It really can. That's my
Spend
why
time
I'm
with
here.
spend time with the information that matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
so this is the thing that I think we sometimes don't look at, and I think my wife's always wondering, why do I want to get into so many arguments, right? I mean, with her as well, but they're and the thing is, we're coming to a state. I think there's a place in the world where we're trying to let people have all their little discussions to the side. You know, the phrase "you do you," right? When we disagree to stuff, we disagree with someone's ideas or thoughts, and we just say, well, let them do their stuff over there. It's harmless. And the thing is, it's not harmless. It's to the point right now where someone's going to do something that is ridiculous, and it's because they were inspired by an alternative truth. So I watched a video this week, and it was a very impassioned video by someone, an anti-vaxxer in Singapore, a young man. And if it was about religion, we would have said he'd been radicalized, but he was really just upset by the idea that everybody was being forced into this vaccination. And the phrase that I got from his video, which is chilling and should be chilling, is this. He says, some people want to be guided by the science and the data. Oh, hang on. He said, some people want to be guided by the science and the evidence instead of the truth. And that's it struck me. So this is the thing, right? They're given all kinds of information. So this thing about education is a double-edged sword. You're going to get information, you're going to get education from both sides. You're going to have people who don't know what they're saying, but are very much capable of going out there and making those speeches, making those videos, and they're getting lots and lots of clicks, lots and lots of views, lots and lots of likes. And views, and they're getting their endorphin charge, and then they're motivated to do even more, and then they get all the confirmation bias, and then they find the evidence that supports their stuff, and because of confirmation bias, they're not checking the details in the news. I received a video from a friend of mine who was, he was just trying to be helpful and said that the next pandemic is here, and he shared with me this thing about this new virus that was the little outbreak was happening in Africa right now, saying it's brand new, there are no vaccines, and what's going to happen in the end is they're going to come out, they were able to reveal that there was going to be a rollout of vaccines that was going to end up killing billions of people, and the vaccine was made of ricin. And I went, if you did any research at all before you forwarded that email to me, you would have found out, well, no, this is not a new virus. This virus is actually from the 1960s. It first appeared in Germany. I can't remember the name of this virus right now, but you'll see it soon enough. It's having a little bit of a resurgence right now in the middle of Africa, and no one would ever make a vaccine from ricin because it's pure toxin, right?
Yeah.
But no one's doing the research to go, that's not what's happening. That wouldn't happen. But they've very kindly forwarded to me just to raise my blood pressure.
And Joe, something that I saw this morning, which will exacerbate that, is Trump now is going to come out with this new social media platform called Truth Social. That is truth in all caps, social. And the money has come in a huge amounts. Something like this SPAC's shares soared more than 40% on news of this social media deal that was completed, so that this Truth Social Trump platform, that scares me. That scares me.
I don't know.
Really.
It's going to be a miserable place to be. I know that much. But I saw something yesterday. Trevor Noah shared a tweet, and so I don't know if this is true, but it was funny anyway. Apparently, on yesterday, somebody got hold of Trump's profile and replaced it with pig testicles covered in feces, so you can't access the site anymore. So, but yeah, I mean, I saw it. And I was just like, oh, what a miserable place that'll be. and talk about confirmation bias, right? Everyone's going to be agreeing with each other.
I
so,
know. That's
Mate, Joe, you might have a bit of fun on that one.
Yeah, it was me. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it. It was me. No, but actually, I forgot the point I was trying to get to in the end with what I was talking about just now, right? Is that people need to come. We need to get people to be able to rise up and have that counter conversation, to have that rational conversation, because there's a bunch of people who just don't know how to have that conversation. They haven't been to social media karate class. And because of that, they just go like, you know what? I'm just going to stay away. I'm going to stay out of trouble here. I'm not going to get involved with this. And it just ends up, in these echo chambers, which are just ridiculous. Some of the ideas. I mean, some of the there were some. It's just the kind of circular arguments that happen for them that they keep pushing about truth. And then if you look at the very statement that they're saying, in itself, it's already kind of like, contradicting itself, and no one's calling themselves out on it. Someone was talking about how COVID deaths, they were complaining about this article saying that what's going to happen, what happens is they don't report COVID deaths. And this article was about COVID deaths. And I went, hang on, you're saying they don't report these numbers, but you're actually sharing an article where they're reporting the numbers. You're like, whoa, hang on, what's that?
Yeah, the lack of logic, right? It's sort of, the lack of logic. So you said ricin before, I mean, just a Google search, what is it? We'll sort of
we'll
take
let you know.
Yeah, like and where is it, and is it being used, and but also fact checking yourself. I mean, if you want to put information out there into the world, surely you don't want to be wrong. Like, so I know that these people aren't doing it because they think they're wrong. They do believe in what they're sharing, and we have to work out a way to overcome that. And I don't know if, joining those social communities like you have, I don't know if that's a good thing to do, because I actually think it infects your soul eventually, and you kind of lose faith in humanity as well. So you've got to be cautious. Like I've watched many friends rage on Twitter with people. And I'm like, why are you bothering? Like, seriously, you can't have a conversation. All they want to do is abuse you. So rather than getting into these arguments, I've got somebody on YouTube recently attacking something I put out, and I'm like, well, all right, if that's your belief, that's your belief. I'm not going to have a fight with you about it. I don't know you. You don't know me. I don't know what you believe. I don't know how much research you've done. So, but if it's you, one of you guys, I'll have an argument any day, because I know you'll do the work. So I don't know, but I think the rest of us need to be vocal on social media. We need to share the truth and the facts, and the people who do the work and find the knowledge. I think it's our obligation. Too many smart people are silent because of the stupidity that they see. And all that means is that stupidity has a bigger platform.
I think we need to like we talk about work-life balance. I think we need to work on mental health balance as well. As in, like, I think what's happening is we've kind of retreated into this place where we're trying to protect our mental health, right? So as we do that, we say, you know what, all this drama is just not worth it. And I think what we do is we need to have to come to some kind of balance, because like what's happening with the environment and everything else, I think this kind of mental health thing is also we're gonna pay a price for it. If everyone retreats into that, you know what, let's let the crazy people do what they do. We don't get involved with the drama. What's gonna happen is enough of that drama is gonna happen, and it will hit us in a much bigger mental health wave down the line. So it's a little bit like the climate crisis, I feel. I think that there's a crisis of stupidity that's building up because we're allowing it to happen. We're going like, oh, you're stupid. We look at that as a kind of handicap. We look at it and so like we should allow them to have different privileges because they're obviously not, whatever, right? And we shouldn't go all the way to that end. I think we should maybe give ourselves, a 5 minute or 10 minute time and go like, okay, you know what? You need to do a little raging today. And when you're done, go back in there and cool off. But you got to do some of that, because right now it's smart people staying silent, smart people looking. I mean, you're looking at your feed and you're getting angry and you can see this impact, but you just go, I give up on this particular thing. There are more important things to do. And when I think more people, when too many people look away from the stuff that is important to say as not being the important thing to do, then no one says it.
Yeah. Tim, you've been quiet.
Yeah. Just listening. It's okay.
He's enjoying the show today.
Yeah. He's one of our viewers.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's so much going on. There's so much nonsense. There's so much noise, and we're kind of preaching to the converted here. So that's the challenge in a nutshell, I guess.
But the silent.
Well, we still need to be talking about it, though. We still need to be sharing, because, like Andrea, I mean, if all the news is stupid, then we're just going to get dumber.
Yeah.
And based on the way social media works and the way trust now works, I mean, trust has always worked the same way, but who we trust is diminished from the media outlets and the politicians and everybody else to just our social circles. Then we have a big responsibility as people in those social circles to be sharing things that have some basis in truth. The challenge is, of course, truth, and truth has been questioned since postmodernism came in the sort of 80s and 90s, and we've all been saying everyone's got their own truth, and you go live your own truth, and at some point we will have a discussion about what is truth. Is your truth the same as my truth, or is there a truth beyond our perspective? And that's possibly when we can agree on what the baseline for having any sort of logical, rational debate will be. And that is that there is a baseline upon which we can have an argument. Otherwise, I'm arguing about oranges and you're arguing about astronauts, and they've just got nothing to do with each other.
Yeah, when you go through history, I mean, one of the signs of the end of civilizations is always when the intellectual sort of level of the society is pulled down, murdered, kicked out. And, you saw at the end of Persia, when the Shah came to power, the first thing they did was get rid of the intellectuals. So when we move into a time where the people who are doing the work, the scientists, the medical professionals, where they aren't heard and trusted, then we know that we've got a problem in our global society, and we're seeing it playing out all around the world. So I do believe that we have a responsibility to humanity to participate, even if it's horrible. But then I've talked to friends, they find it so upsetting to be on social media these days because of what's going on. So stop following people who upset you. Have a smaller footprint, if that's going to help your mental health. But if you're strong enough to participate, please don't go away, because we need you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to move on to the next bit? So I pay a fair bit of attention to what's going on in China. Are you guys kind of interested in China and everything that goes on over there? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's some pretty weird stuff. Like last week, I was talking about LinkedIn's going to close their China operation. One of the most popular Muslim prayer chats on Apple has been removed by Apple. And there's also a rising group of young influencers who are out there sort of speaking the party's sort of dialogue, right? So the anti-West sentiment is rising. Today, Biden said that if China does anything with Taiwan, America will protect Taiwan. But in this last week, we've had some other interesting things happen. So apparently China has tested a hypersonic nuclear missile. And America...
A hypersonic capable. Hypersonic nuclear capable missile. It wasn't nuclear. Yeah.
Thank you for the correction. Then the US basically have said that they're defenseless against a weapon like this, and they don't have anything that can deal with it. China has denied testing this missile, and at the same time, within a few hours of China doing this, North Korea obviously launched a missile into the Japan waters. So this has been going on this week, and obviously it's the same Cold War rhetoric we saw with Russia. I always remember working for an aerospace company, and the fighter jet that we were terrified of was at the air show in Melbourne, and I went inside this fighter jet, and I remember everyone, that was technology at a level that we couldn't quite comprehend. I remember going inside this fighter jet at the air show, and it was just basically a shambles. I mean, it looked like it was glued together, right? But so when I look at the rhetoric around sort of Cold War language, I'm always looking at it through those sort of eyes. But it is a little bit of a concern considering everything else that's going on in the world, that here we are in another Cold War at a time when we've really got other bigger priorities to be focused on more than ever. But the language of division, the US, the defense have just released a report basically saying, where the risk of war and, climate crisis, climate refugees, they've all come out in a report that was just released just in the last 24 hours. So, yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about where the world's leaders' minds are right now. I don't think they're in the right place. What do you guys think?
I always get a bit doubtful and skeptical when a country's national defense say we can't defend ourselves. I mean, so then I go, why would they say that? So most people would usually say, oh, this is ludicrous and blah, 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 blah. But they wouldn't go out and say we can't defend ourselves against that unless they want something. And then I just go, well, what do they want? Well, they want to spend more money on arms and weapons. And they want to sell these weapons and these defenses to everybody else. And then I'm just like, and then I just go, seriously. I mean, I guess if your number one export is weapons, then fair enough. I get it. But everyone needs to know that.
Yeah.
So I after a while, I just did. And this is the problem, I guess. This is the biggest challenge is we all become ostriches with our heads in the ground because it's just, these guys are playing a game that's tiresome, really.
Yeah.
Cathy, you've probably got something more intelligent to say than that.
I don't think so, but I do have something to say. I'm reading a book called 2034. Have you heard of that? It's by Elliot Ackerman. I haven't finished it, but this is a novel that is actually happening right now in real life, except that it hasn't gone to the point that it has in the novel. It's that in the year 2034, not right now, the U.S. president has said if China does anything to Taiwan, that we will, we're laying down the gauntlet. This is a red line. And they did. And then something else happened. I'm not going to ruin the book, but it is absolutely fascinating. I'm having to fight off reading it right here, right now. But it's a real page turner. But it escalates in a way that what happens in real life happens, which is unexpected things happen. And then when I heard Biden was saying, we're going to protect Taiwan, it's an amazing kind of, it's amazing. I didn't know about this. Sorry, one little important part is that the technology in the story is something that China has come up with that cloaks, that is they can cloak their weaponry and their ships and everything else. And the U.S. has nothing to protect itself with that. And that's how it goes crazy. It's like when the people from the U.S. were saying, yes, we don't have anything we can do against that. It's like, wow, this book is happening right now. It's earlier than 2034.
Yeah, what's the book called again? 2034.
It's 2034. Elliot Ackerman.
Sequel's much better. It's 2035.
Every time.
I hope it's better.
2035 would be a spoiler in itself, wouldn't it? For 2034.
Don't tell us about that.
2035 is a subtitle is Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, China's such an interesting country to me. One of my favorite history subjects was always China, and every time China takes its eye off the domestic ball, it loses control of its country. And the one thing China doesn't want to lose is control of its country. They've got a seventh of the world's population living there, right? But also the climate impacts that are going to start happening more and more. Like they can't get their coal out of their mines because the mines have been flooded because of climate change. So I don't know, like China's closing off at a time that I think is a really bad sign, because we need to work together. We need global cooperation. So yeah, I'm keep an eye out for the news on China. It's a significant shift. It's definitely a significant shift diplomatically.
Can I offer another view on this? If you were China and you were looking out and you just looked at the rest of the world and how the world's devolving right now, wouldn't you want to keep everybody out?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing that I think has come around, because I think for quite a while they just said, okay, you know what we'll do is we'll have a balance of more capitalism, and that's going to be fine. It's going to work out okay. And what's interesting about China for me, and it's outdated for sure, but whether or not it's something that is desirable, I mean, have a think about this. I kind of feel that China is what Lee Kuan Yew might want to have if he had his choice. If he had the way things were going to be, I think he might have done it that way. Where you kind of decided, yeah, this is for the greater good, we'll do this. This is for the greater good, we'll do this. This is going to be uncomfortable, we'll do this. People are going to complain about this, but we'll do it anyway. And they kind of went ahead and they just did it, and I think and not that I agree with what they're doing, not that I agree with the liberties that they trample on the way. But I also see the value of what they're doing. I mean, that they're holding on to some wisdom. They're holding on to something where they go like, this is worthwhile to hold on to. We don't want to let go of these values. They're looking at escalating property prices and saying that, no, that isn't sustainable. We can't throw our next generation into that kind of a situation. It's not going to work. And they say, okay, we're going to fix that. We're going to do something about that. It's going to hurt, but we'll do it, So, yeah. I mean, I do agree. There's a need for cooperation, but I think the problem is, whose rules are we going to go by? When China is invited to play, they're not invited to play. They're invited to give up what they believe in so you can play our game, rather than, okay, let's see what your ideas are and see how we can work with your ideas. And I think that's the problem. The problem is people don't want to go the China way, even though representatively they represent a lot of people. They should, even from a purely democratic point of view, they should have a greater say in the world. But we refuse to let them have it.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of ways to look at this. A lot.
Yeah.
All right. Should we move into our theme for the week? And I'm looking forward to hearing what Cathy's got to say, being our most authentic selves. I don't think any of us struggle with that. Authenticity is something we're hearing a lot about today, right? And I think it's also at risk of becoming just another buzzword. It's overused, but also I think the meaning of it isn't necessarily widely understood and what it really truly means. So, Cathy, would you be happy to share with us why it's important, what it really means, why it matters, what it can deliver to you personally, and maybe tips, ideas, whatever, on how people can work to become their most authentic selves. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Andrea. I appreciate the opportunity to share this because it really means a lot to me. And you're right, authenticity is a word that is used a lot now. When I use it, I'm referring to a need to both understand ourselves, like who we really are, what we really believe and care for, outside of the conditioning that we all got growing up with. And also the need to act from that place, which requires self-confidence and courage. It means acting from inside instead of continuing to just go along to get along, which is what most people most of us do until we start to find ourselves. It's where we get to where we can make a difference in our own lives and in the world. So I would just say in general, it's about getting clear of what we were brought up to believe about ourselves and about the world. I would also say that most people are living stressful lives, ongoing lives, not living with presence, not really having time to do some self-reflection about themselves or about what matters to them. So just since you asked about what can we do to get there, there are two parts as I see it. One is to know yourself, to really know yourself. And I would say most people have a sense about themselves, but they don't know themselves deeply. I'm going to recommend two books. One, you may have heard of, Uncommon Courage by Andrea Edwards, because
Thanks,
one of the things, it's one of the things I love about that book is you're sharing your journey to understanding yourself, things that you uncovered, just like your own inner voice, inner critic. Reading a book like that can help us to also question ourselves and say, what is there for me? It's all about uncovering who you really are outside of your conditioning. Everyone on the planet was conditioned. Oh, there you go. There's that book. I have one here, but it'll look backwards. There's a second book I would recommend, which also can be helpful to understand our lives outside of our conditioning. And
2034, I think you said it.
Yeah. That one too. Yeah. Yeah, that one will help. That's the one. That's the one. No, there's another one called The Four Agreements. The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. There are lots of books, but those two I would strongly recommend. It's just a way to start to understand, first of all, that we all got this conditioning. Everyone's trying to help us to survive in the world when we're little. And so we take on some understandings of things, and they may or may not be true for us. It's what we were told, honestly, from people to try to help us to live and survive. So the first step is to know yourself, to really know yourself, uncover what really matters to you. And part of that is do some kind of slowing down, some kind of reflection, some kind of grounding practice so that you slow down and can start to be with yourself. And then you also may need some support to get clear. That can speed things up. So I would just say very often people I work with who I'm coaching or seeing in workshops, very often people are suffering. We're suffering for one thing or another in our lives, but we don't really know that things can be different or how to step into that. Very often we don't even know we have agency, that we can do something. Anyway, that's the first one, is to know yourself. The second one is to act from that place. And what that requires, which is, there's no short supply of that in this little room here, but it requires confidence and some real courage. It means having difficult conversations, which could mean when someone comes in and you find they put a plastic bottle of Coke in your refrigerator, you're saying something. But it also could be speaking up when someone says something racist or sexist or ageist or homophobic, saying that you're gay or trans or whatever, getting help when you're being battered, telling the truth about your relationship with your spouse, to really acting from a place that's more real and whole. So I'm talking about living with integrity. That's really it. And the impact when people do develop over time, which I'm fortunate I get to see because I'm a coach, the impact is on not only themselves, it's on people around them, on family members, people at work, but it can also then develop into, what am I really here for? What really matters to me? What do I want to step into and start helping in the world? So for me, that's why it's super important.
Yeah,
That's it.
I love that. You know, one of the things that I talk a lot about is work out what your true values are and then anchor yourself in your values. And to me, it's a starting point, right? So if you're a person of your word and you say to yourself, I am a person of my word and nobody can switch me off, knock me off my anchor, then you over time, people will understand you're a person of your word. But you've got to anchor yourself in them. So I remember some younger people that I've worked with in the past, I could see them coming in and they were still trying to work out who they were. And I was watching other people constantly knocking them off their values. And before they knew it, they were lost. Yeah. And that's, to me, the beginning of the journey. And you've got to get back to that person. And just, if you can remember, you know, what's important to you? What will you not compromise on? You know, I annoy the crap out of my husband with my values, but he also knows that there's things that I'm uncompromising on, as he is, right? And we're very clear with each other what those things are for each of us. So values to me are super important.
I agree. That's super important. I also find, God, there's something you just said that I was going to comment on, and now it's gone. Husband. Yeah, that's
annoying.
No.
She's annoying.
Thanks, Selves.
No, but it'll come back.
I was trying to prompt you there. No.
Oh yeah, thank you. That didn't work. I don't know. It'll come back.
Yeah, it does.
Anchor, probably the anchor. Was she talking about the anchor?
Anchoring in your values.
So I guess my question then is, if I anchored in my values at this age, when should I change that? When should I allow myself to be influenced by a better version of it?
Yeah, I mean,
because
that's always.
Yeah, so otherwise.
Sorry.
Tim, why don't you hang on to that? I saw the idea come back to Cathy. Let's go back to Cathy before it leaves her again.
You wrote it down.
Yeah. But Tim can, I wrote it down. That's all right. I'll just say real quickly. So, you know, I'm with you about the values, but I also sometimes hear people say things like, well, you know, that's just I can't change. That's just the way I am. And I figured out some time in the past, years ago, that the truth is, whatever we say, this is just the way I am, I can't change. Really, that's rarely the way we really are. And the way I describe it is this. I ask the person, just imagine that if you were born on an island and there was nobody else there, and you grew up on this island, and when you're 25 or 27 years old, someone landed on the island, you're not going to walk up to that person and say, look, I just can't get along with people like you, because you're not going to say, this is the way I am. I have to have the data, and I can't, you know, if I don't have the data, then I can't have a conversation. It's that things have happened to us in life that have made us make choices about how we are. But that's part of, I'm with you about the values, is starting from that is a great place to start. But I also think people need to do some reflection in order to get there, because we all have been told by whether it's our family members or our school people or extended family or the society or whatever, these are the right values, and this is what you need to live by, and we very often take them on. So helping people to actually get to what really is their values, what do you really stand for, what really matters to you. It's not so easy.
No, I agree. Okay. And what Tim was saying, like, you know, so one of your values is I tell the truth. If you grow out of that and say, now I want to lie, that's, you know, that's it's a decision, right? But but you're right, Cathy. You got to go inside and you got to say, is that me? Is that mine? was it given to me by my parents, by the church I
Yes.
attended, whatever,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And then you've got to say, does it sit with me? And you've got to have silence in your life to be able to do that. And one of the things I
Yes.
talk a lot about is going, for me, it was travel, just on the road for months and months and months, facing my mind. Not everybody needs that much time, but I certainly did. But I also find people are scared to face themselves.
Yeah.
There's a lot of terror, because you must have seen that in your work too, Cathy.
I do. And there's a real hesitation to really look at what's there. And sometimes it's people, we just had a coaching session a couple of days ago where someone was saying, I don't even know how to react to that. I don't know what that is. It can be scary, but it's also, people get through it. It's not like it's it's not like you're running into a brick wall or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it comes in stages, and sometimes you get tired of it, and sometimes when you evolve, the people in your life are no longer relevant.
Yes.
Or you start to recognize that they're actually creating harm for you. I was speaking to someone just recently. They got rid of all of their friends because on their 50th birthday, not one person turned up, and my heart ached so much for this person that you could be put in that situation. But she realized that she wasn't surrounding herself with the sort of people that she should be surrounding herself with. So it was sad and it was heartbreaking, but she grew from it, so we've got to look around us as well. Sorry, Tim?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I just burst into tears because I realized nobody turned up to mine, but we're all in lockdown at the time.
Oh, boy.
I think the idea of reflection is a really good one. It's a very challenging one. I think that takes a lot of courage, but it also takes a bit of planning to do it, because I think a lot of the time we go through our lives experiencing something and tolerating it until it gets to the point of it forces us to make a call on it. And that takes a long time. That process takes a long time of getting down to the bottom and then just going, no, I don't want that. So now I know what I don't want. And that happened a lot for me with relationships. It was like, I don't know what I want in a relationship. And I'm in a relationship and go, well, I don't want that. And so, and then, okay, next. And now I don't want this as well. And so I basically, by building up the whole list of things I didn't want, I was able to then kind of work out what I probably did want. I could have saved myself a bit of time, but sometimes you kind of got to live it.
Yeah.
I agree. Sometimes, you got to live it. But one of the things I work with people on is moving those conversations back further towards when you first, if you get together, you're seeing someone and you're dating or something, and then they do something and you're all in love and everything's great and everything they do is wonderful. But then something happens, and you're thinking, God, that's weird, but oh yeah, no, I love you. And so you let things slide. The same things happen in the workplace. When someone does something that we don't like and we don't want to, he'll get better. He won't do that forever, but then he does it again. And then we start.
It was only a little bit of fraud.
Yeah, right. Only a little bit of fraud. It was just $10,000. Hello. Anyway, and then it gets to where we're looking at the person in a different way. Now we're thinking, God, he is just totally lazy. She doesn't even care about this team. Whatever it is, we're thinking that we've made up now because we never had that conversation to just say, wait. I saw you do it like this, and I'm wondering about that. What is that about? Because we could all save ourselves in terms of relationships. Well, we're down the road on relationships, but everyone could save themselves some heartache by just speaking up, which is where the courage comes from. But I also know I'm like you, Tim. I learned about what I wanted, what was great for me, and what wasn't by making mistakes, and just that's how we learn. So, but now I don't.
Your question just now was fantastic, though. It's like, so I saw you do this. I'm wondering about that. So I'm owning my wondering, but I'm offering the platform for them to explain themselves rather than going, you did it like this and therefore you're wrong, is
Yeah.
just basically going into battle.
Or even worse, why'd you do it like that? Is that what you think
Yeah.
that's right? I mean, what it's anything
American.
you're doing where you're poking somebody else
Yep.
as if you are the one that's connected to God and you know everything. It's just not okay. It's respecting the other person. That's it. And that you can do the same thing in the workplace as in your private life.
I've had a few
works.
conversations with you. I've had a few conversations with you, Cathy, about expectations as well. And so some of it comes down to what do we expect of others that hasn't been explicitly discussed?
Yes.
And your conversation about Lego is wonderful. Can you share that story?
Sure. A guy I was coaching in the past at a company, but it was during the COVID times. He was working at home, and he has a couple of little kids, and his wife was at home too. So he was in their bedroom and set up his office there. But he went out to get a cup of coffee in the kitchen, and one of the kids had left out didn't clear up all the Legos, and he was walking barefooted and stepped on a Lego. Now, that's not going to be a pleasant feeling. And he, we were having this session, and he told me, he said, I just, I was so angry. It was like, why didn't she get this thing picked up? And here I am, my foot's hurt and etc. And so then I asked him, I said, I'm sure that hurt a lot. I said, I'm interested in knowing about the conversation you had with your wife earlier, where you discussed about and agreed that she would be in charge of making sure all the Legos were picked up off the floor. And he looked at me and he said, oh, yeah, we didn't have that conversation. We got it. It's like we go off sometimes and assume someone's read our mind that, it's unexpressed expectations. Causes lots of problems at home and in the workplace too. Yeah,
Expectations are amazing. You'll meet somebody and their father has let them down for 40 years and they still expect it to be different.
Yeah.
And because they're still expecting it to be different, they're living in pain. And it's like, just stop expecting anything else. And then, because actually when you move out of expectation and you actually expect nothing, often they actually step up a little bit. But it doesn't, it's my shrinking the bubble analogy, right? Not everyone's going to be able to meet your expectations. So the best thing to do is to not have expectations. I have expectations of my husband and I have expectations of my children, but they're different because I'm allowing them to grow and, they're going to make mistakes. And so my expectations can't limit that growth. But it's, there's things like tell the truth, be respectable, that sort of stuff, right? But expectations are the bane of our existence. And so many people struggle. So many with that.
Well, yeah, exactly. And here's the thing. It's actually expectations. I don't know. It's like, I totally agree. What we can share is here's what I'd like. What I would like is this, but you need to verbalize it, because otherwise, if we don't verbalize it, we just make assumptions and assume they're going to do that. And then they don't. And then, there's a Lego on the floor and we go nuts about it. But it's actually saying what you're thinking and making a request, but the other person is an adult, except for your kids, although they're pretty close there. And they can say no if they want to.
Yeah.
Any adult can, but just, you have to ask.
Yeah. And then if they're never going, if they say to you, I can't give you what you want, accept it.
Yeah. Then live your life on. I mean, that's the way it is. And it's a great thing to know if you have a boss, for example, who is really rude, always interrupts you. And if you say, one thing I noticed is that 3 times this morning when I've been speaking, before I finished, you started speaking on top of what I was saying. What I'd really like is if you could find a way to allow me to finish what I'm saying before you started, that would be really great. Is that okay for you? The thing is, they could say, look, sorry, but no, that's not me. If I want to say something, I'm going to say something. If it were me, I would want to know that my boss felt like that. I'd be looking for another boss myself. But if you don't ask, they're never going to change. They might say, what I heard someone say this, my wife tells me that all the time. And, I know I need to make a change. And he said, I'm sorry. But the point is, we need to just ask. Just ask and listen. And you're right. If they say no, well, okay, now I know. And I can make changes or decisions in my own life, which could say, you know what, I'm just going to live with him because I really love this job. But it might not.
Yeah.
Important piece of information.
Absolutely. And don't suffer in silence, right? For some people, it's very difficult to speak up and have those conversations. But if you're struggling, that's where someone like Cathy would help, right? Getting a coach or a mentor or somebody who can help you find what the right words are, but don't continue to suffer. And if you've got a boss who's just a plain bully, if you're still there 12 months later, then you've got to ask yourself why. So yeah.
So
all right, should we move? Sorry.
So the 4 agreements are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, always do your best, and the 5th one is be clear on who picks up the Lego.
Yeah. And that one comes out in 2036.
Which is after 2034 and 2035.
No, it's true. But I tell you, you have to read the book to really get it. The same thing with Uncommon Courage. Read the book. Don't just, really, it's super, super important and so helpful.
The book you really want to write is Lego the Lego already.
Oh, boy.
So,
that's right.
That's
actually one of the things here, and one of the things about coaches, and one of the things that makes coaches, that differentiates great coaches from lesser ones, is their ability to ask great questions. And one of the things I think people can really learn from great coaches is a great way to ask a question. And some of those things that you just mentioned then, I'm interested in knowing it's not even a question, it's a sort of a statement. I'm interested in knowing a bit more about this, like when you had that conversation. Or I'm wondering about, or I noticed that, earlier today I was interrupted 3 times before I could finish. Yeah. And I'm wondering about, whether we can have a conversation about that. I just think the way of asking questions like that is really powerful.
I can tell you, I have clients who, we're talking about whatever challenges there are going on in their own lives, but very often people are making notes about just how to ask a question in a way that's not poking somebody. It's not in any way harming. It is coming from a totally respectful place and more likely to get what you're looking for, which is not for someone to run screaming from the room or to be irritated at you because you're not poking them in any way.
I have a feeling, I do have a suspicion that wearing this shirt while I'm asking any kind of question, no matter how helpful it is, might put out the wrong message.
It might, buddy. It might.
All right.
So, Cathy, now's a great time to plug that book that you're writing, which is about this. So it's called, what's it called? Amazing Questions by Cathy Johnson or something like that?
It's something like that. No.
When's it going to be out?
I don't have the title yet. It's going to be 2033. Okay. It's not going to be late.
So before the world goes to crap.
I'd be happy with the blog post to start with from Cathy.
I hear you, darling. Me too.
All right. So let's get on to the other news that got your attention this week. I've got a cracker. Have you guys got some good ones?
Yeah.
Okay.
Joe does.
Has it got to do with Bitcoin and everything else?
What have you got?
Oh, no, Andrea, go first.
All right, there is a
She always
what's it
steals
called?
my one, though. That's
There's
the
a
problem.
story called Sprinklegate. Have you heard this one?
Oh,
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
what my dog did to the neighbors.
Yeah, apparently a British baker has been caught using illegal American sprinkles.
Oh, you know,
Oh.
I saw a headline. Yeah,
Yeah.
What?
So I don't know
they
what
were
it is,
banned.
but yeah,
What's in
obviously
the
you got.
sprinkles?
Well, who knows? But American food's full of so many additives and preservatives.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
That would be
I'm
my
sure.
guess.
Yeah, but I think American sprinkles are rubbish. The best are Australian anyway. So you know, I thought that was a funny break from serious news for me.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, that might explain why Taiwan's in trouble. Okay. The one for me is that the Queen, who's 95, visited hospital, and it's not to do with COVID. It's for preliminary investigations, and it meant that she didn't have to go to Northern Ireland. But this is not actually a funny article at all. It's just something I noticed, but I decided to make it funny. She went to hospital on Thursday after having dinner with Boris Johnson on Tuesday. And actually, she had dinner with Boris and Bill Gates and a bunch of others pre these talks that are coming up. So, but yeah, she's getting on. The Queen, I'm worried for her.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not worried for her. I mean, Joe's inevitability comments earlier on, there is an element of inevitability the next few years. But yeah, I just noticed that. It's not the most important news in the world. But
yeah. I noticed it. I didn't have a chance to have a look into it, but it's kind of one of those, age stories. Once this process begins, and I don't know,
it's going to be an interesting
She's done
time.
an amazing job. Yeah,
she's been amazing. I mean, it's going to be a really interesting time for England once she passes. Yeah, that's going to be a very strange one for the whole UK. The other one I noticed was there was an article, a research paper put together by scientists from various parts of the world, and they were looking at how tropical countries lost a lot of 5 hours of daily physical activity per person in 2020 because of climate challenges, and then how dengue is one of the things that could resurface in a significant and serious way in the tropics, with, for example, Singapore noticing it was at the same time 2021 saw the rise of a locally rare dengue virus called the DenV3, and we haven't seen an outbreak of this in 30 years.
Wow.
Because these things are starting to make a comeback because the conditions that we're creating conditions that are going to harm ourselves.
So that 5 hours a week, is that per person per week, or
this was I'll have to find that one, but my understanding was they lost 5 hours a day of daily physical activity. So presumably that's people that were outside doing stuff. Now, with
farming, buildings, yeah. I'd be interested if we
I'll need to get some. I'll try and find the numbers on that.
Because 5 hours per day right now would be catastrophic.
No, it'd have to be over a longer period.
Yeah, if you think of farmers.
If we lost 5 hours of work time for the year, multiplied out by the entire population of people that live on the equator, that's going to be huge.
Yeah. And when we get to 1.5, that's when we move into that sort of too hot to live territory. And we've already seen the too hot sort of situations happening all over the world. But when it moves up from a temperature perspective, then that's when we go into famines and then you've got pestilence, which you were just talking about. And, so
let me just put that in perspective. If it is 5 hours per person per year, which sounds insignificant, just remember that there's about 261 work days per year, and after annual leave and everything else, and sick days and everything else, I calculated this years ago, you end up with about 221 work days, reasonable amounts of work days, and if we have 8 hour or 9-hour day. Let's say 8-hour days and an hour off for lunch. 221 multiplied by 8 is 1,768 work hours per year. And if we've lost 5 of those, then that is sort of 0.3%. And that 0.3% of those, that even the 5 hours multiplied by a million people is a lot of full-time work lost, based on just these small links. But anyway, I'll try and find out what the actual figure is. But I just noticed that there were 2 things. One was the rise of dengue in this part of the world. And then there was another article talking about Delta Plus in Russia. Have you heard of Delta Plus?
No.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. Who else has got something?
Well, I want to tell the horrible, horrible story of the man who lost his key to his bicycle lock. I don't know if you've had any of this yet, but this is one of those stories that's been hugely popular locally. A guy loses the key to his bicycle in a mall and it searches desperately for all kinds of ways to free his bicycle from his own lock. He wants to get a wire cutter from the mall, and the mall won't lend it to him because he can't prove that it's his bicycle. So what he does in the end is something that's inadvisable. He calls the police. Now, he calls the police to say that the bicycle was stolen and he'd found the bicycle at the mall, and then what the police would do was come over and they'd help him free his stolen bicycle, right? All this sounds like a bad idea already, and it's worse when you find out that he also is a police officer himself. So he's not having a great day. The funny thing is, he had actually gone ahead and taken the advice of his colleagues on chat as he was saying, what do I do with this? And I think some of his helpful colleagues had kind of joked with him and go like, what you should do is just call it in, and then this will happen and that will happen. And as the article said, I can't remember which online platform said it. The next line was in bold. He says, he actually calls the police, right? Because he takes the bad advice. So he's been charged, and the good news is his colleagues have not.
You just Singapore news. It's always amazing. Cathy, have you got any ones?
Yeah. I was just okay. Here's one article from the New York Times. In Bogota, Colombia, they have set up a hotline for men, and it's aimed at aim is at fighting violence against women. The focus is on men, to teach them to understand their emotions and control their actions. The whole idea is pushing men to focus on how that often unexamined attitude is hurting their own lives and the lives around them. So they're looking to inspire a deeper cultural change, which I just find interesting. And they're apparently lots of people calling in.
So it's working.
I also, I have this thing about animal cruelty. It is really hard for me. And I read this article. This was a CNN thing, but it was about somewhere in California, or the state of California. California pork prices were going up due to this new change where they're going to allow sows, so female pigs, to not be penned up in a very small space. I didn't write down it's like they're living their lives in this little place where they can't move much around, and now they've made this new law where they can actually have some, I think it's 25 feet by something, but the big news item was the price is going to go up, and that's going to hurt the markets and this and the other. I don't know, that drives me nuts. It really does.
Because we eat the pain and suffering of the animals that we harm, right? So if you want to eat meat, surely you want to eat meat from animals that don't have all those stress hormones in their bodies, right? Yeah. It's phenomenal. It really is. All right. You guys ready for the next bit? The finale? All right. What's keeping you distracted at the moment? I was talking about the podcast that I've been listening to, Wall Street Journal's Future of Everything. Keep an eye on that. It's good. They do some really good topics, but right now they're doing this energy storage one, which I think is important for us to learn. So who's obviously, Cathy, you've been reading anything on Netflix or podcasts or anything? Anything else?
Margaret's out of town, so I'm not watching anything. I haven't watched anything for 5 weeks because she does all the Netflix and all of that stuff. I don't do that. But I do watch, but not with. It's just me.
She's going to come up and she's going to be rocking in the corner.
No, I love my books. I really do. So I'll tell you one other book. Is it okay to talk about books?
Yeah.
What are they?
Yeah.
Again, just a quick reminder.
Where's the one this is not I did it on Audible. This is wonderful, another wonderful book that is by a coach, and the name of it is The Way of Integrity. It's one I could have written, but anyway, it's a brilliant, not exactly her she's using her story as well, but The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck. It's a brilliant one. I highly recommend that one. That's keeping me. Well, I just finished that. Now it's 2034, and I just can't wait. I don't know what's going to happen.
I love a book like that.
Oh,
all right,
God.
Tim, what's got you distracted?
I've been binge watching The Orville. But it's been a restrained binge because there's only 2 seasons. So I'm like wanting to binge, but I have to I have to stop. Otherwise I'll watch it all. There'll be nothing else to watch. So, and I've been saving up. I'm very good at saving. I'm very good at saving television shows. I've been saving up Only Murders in the Building so that there's a few episodes that I can binge because I can't stand waiting a week for the next one. So
I've seen some more. There's more talk about Murders in the Building now on social media. I don't know if you noticed. So people are obviously starting to pay attention to it. So,
well, it's obviously they've heard it on this show.
Obviously.
Oh, yeah.
It's got nothing to do with Steve Martin and Martin Short being famous.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. All right, Joe?
Well, first of all, I would say I would hate that a show like this would be the source of recommendations for viewing because people would have to go through all the other important stuff to get to it right at the end. I really enjoy the podcasts that come out of the Pushkin network. So Pushkin is one that's built around Malcolm Gladwell and his stuff. And there's one here called Cautionary Tales. Cautionary Tales with Tim Harford. Superbly written, or I should say superbly rewritten. He's one of these guys who's very good at going out there and finding something from somewhere else and putting it together and telling the story well. So he's not necessarily the most original of writers, but what he does is he finds those interesting stories and brings them to you. And so he brings all kinds of tales, essentially, that are not quite what they seem when you first hear about them. So and always with a twist where you go like, oh, okay, so I should really think about things a little bit more. So Cautionary Tales, he's got, I think, 2 seasons or 3 seasons of it already, and each one is well written, well produced, well researched, and always interesting. So the thing that he's got right now is something which I think is really relevant in the time that we have right now. The title is called "The Truth About Hansel and Gretel," and I won't do a spoiler on this, but it is basically the question of what happens when you say something is true when it's not, you know. So it starts off, and I can tell you this part, but like the movie Fargo, I had never seen the movie Fargo, and I understand that the movie Fargo starts by telling you that this is based on a true story, which apparently it's not. So that's the kind of thing that it discusses, and that's the kind of thing I think the world that we're living in is based on. Everybody has that. It's based on a true story without any substantiation.
You know the author of Wicked, and that he did a whole series of books where he took famous fairy tales and then wrote different stories. So Wicked's about the Wicked Witch, right? And it tells her story, and it was a story that we never got. It's not the same guy. Is it a different
no, I think not. This is Tim Harford. Tim Harford is much more about the truth rather than rewriting stuff. But he does talk about he does talk about some creative work that's gone into that and how people are affected by that. Because I mean, like, Dan Brown's a good example of someone who writes something that if you're not paying attention, you go like, "Wow, this is real." You'd have to be, of course, very distracted to not realize that the word novel is part of it. But
just reading an article the other day that people believe the Dan Brown novels as truth.
Wow.
Just the other day, I was reading something about it. So yeah, that's.
And several movies have been the basis of people's historical recounts about how we had this guy on Mars and he survived completely on potatoes and stuff like that, and we sent out a rescue mission and brought him back, and how wonderful we are.
We could actually solve world hunger if we didn't spend all the money saving Matt Damon from being lost in space. He's stuck in space in lots of movies. Well, actually, it's not just in space. He was Private Ryan, so we had to save him. We had to save him from Mars. We had to save him from somewhere else. We're saving him from everywhere.
Yeah, maybe he's worth saving. All right, guys. Well,
maybe we lock him up in a small pen next to a pig.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, first of all, Cathy, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you come and join us again. It's really lovely to have that.
My pleasure.
That perspective of authenticity. I think it was. It's a really important conversation that we all need to be having more of, and trying to help other people who are struggling with, speaking their truth, or finding the right words to sort of solve some of the challenges that they're facing. I upload the podcast as quickly as possible to Uncommon Courage. So if you prefer to listen to this as an audio, that's there every week. But otherwise, that's it. That's the No Show for this week.
Yeah, just keep a lookout for Delta Plus, which was called AY 4.2 in Britain. Just that's the one that Russia's worried about. So they're going to lockdown because apparently it's even more contagious. So we've got to, take care, everyone.
Yeah. Just remember, we're 2 weeks behind the COVID news. The virus always wins.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.
See you.
Thanks, Tia.
Bye-bye.